Hello and welcome back to Continental Club, where we discuss the hottest topics in European football. Yes, it is not a mirage. We are actually on a shoot location. We are in the East Dulwich Tavern in East Dulwich, and it's an absolute privilege to be joined by Henry Hill and Michael McCubbin. Thank you so much for bearing with us over the last 18 months or so. We've been shooting on Zoom, etc. Now we're back in person. It feels pretty good. McCubbs, it's like the old days. It's like 2019 all over again.
What a great year that was, 2019. What a great year that was. Yes, I'm buzzing to be back. It's crazy to actually be under the lights again, and it all feels very professional once again. So yeah, thanks to the East Dulwich Tavern for having us, and hopefully this is the sign of things to come.
Absolutely. Please go check out the East Dulwich Tavern if you are a Londoner. Henry, it's one of your first shoots in person, you were saying. This must be a very weird feeling, sorry.
It's a very weird person indeed, yeah.
No, the pint's already gone to your head.
Exactly,
yeah.
You had couple of sips.
By the way, I just wanted to point out, the Sunday Vibes boys never have beer anymore. So here we go. Continental Club boys, showing how it's done. But yeah, honestly, I think since I joined Football Daily, 1/6 of my work time there has been in my bedroom, so this is great. This is fun. This is why I joined originally, and it's good to be here with you two in person too. So
absolute privilege to be here. Right, let's get into today's show. We are talking dark horses for the Champions League. Now, we've now had 4 match weeks of this year's competition, and things are beginning to settle down. We've seen some teams already qualify: Bayern Munich, Ajax, Juventus, and Man City. But today we don't want to talk about the big dogs, the favourites for this year's competition. You could shove Chelsea in there as well, obviously. We want to talk about potential dark horses, and I think the best shout have already qualified, and it's Ajax, and it's at the suggestion of Callum Moore's 9 McCubbs, because they've been phenomenal domestically and in Europe. Yeah,
absolutely. There's very much shades of 2018-19, I feel like, with Ajax at the moment, and we all know what happened then, obviously. That demolition at the Bernabeu is still one of my favourite games I've ever seen in the Champions League. Who was it who had a real masterclass that day? Tadic was amazing, didn't he? Did he do? Was it Casemiro he did with the Maradona turn in that game? Casemiro or someone. David Neres was brilliant. Frankie de Jong, I think, kind of completely sat down Luka Modric at one point. But enough about the nostalgia, because obviously this is still, this is the rebuilt team from then under Ten Hag, and I think they lost 6 of the players, the regular starters from that side. Obviously, De Ligt left, De Jong left, Van der Beek. I'm forgetting a couple of others, but
that's a Shona as well.
Yeah, I forget about him. He obviously scored a free kick in that match, didn't he? Credit has to go to Ten Hag for building back up this side, and for the club for sticking by him. And they look just as strong as they were then. And you could probably argue there's less star quality in this Ajax side, but you could also argue that perhaps they're more functional in terms of that 4-0 win over Dortmund. They were so dominant throughout. Obviously followed up by that 5-0 win over PSG that kind of avenged their 4-0 loss in the Johan Cruyff Shield earlier in the season. But the striking thing is just how good they've been defensively. They've only conceded 2 in the league. I think their XG at the other end is only second to Man City in the Champions League so far this year, which is pretty astounding considering, like you say, Dukes, the kind of quality across the board and how many teams look so strong this year. But having said that, I think that they've got as good a chance this year as they did in 2018-19 in some ways, because you do have a very strong pool of teams, particularly the 3 big English clubs that we don't need to kind of go into too much, and Bayern Munich, who are definitely in a better place than they were back then. They're looking like they could scale the heights that they did in 2019-20 again. But equally, Barcelona are a lot weaker than they were then. Real Madrid, who they beat, are a lot weaker now. Juventus are obviously a lot weaker. Inter Milan are not as strong as they were last year. PSG probably better, but equally, I don't think there's necessarily, I don't think that the level at the top is necessarily that much higher than it was in 2018-19. Especially when you look at kind of say like Man City and Liverpool, I don't think they're better than they were then. You could actually argue that perhaps they're a little bit weaker than they were in 2018-19. I feel like that was kind of, in some ways, the peak of Klopp and Guardiola. So yeah, I think they have a really good chance, and bringing in someone like Seb Haller last year. I think he has been a brilliant signing for them. But one thing he does offer is that aerial presence, which I don't think they really had in their forward line before. Obviously, they had De Ligt coming up for corners and whatnot, but I think he adds an extra element that is really, really strong for them. Tadic is, looks evergreen, doesn't he? And also a big shout out because I think he should have got 2 goals yesterday on the basis of scoring a goal and then hitting your gonads on the post. I think it needs a shout out, man. I think if that happens, you get 2 goals because it's horrible, but it's also hilarious. like seeing him running behind the goal.
There's nothing better than seeing one of your mates get hit in the balls.
Yeah, it's great, and to see him trying to celebrate, but then actually being no, I can't celebrate because I can't actually walk, and I've just got to I literally have to cradle my penis with my hand because it's just in so much pain. I can't imagine.
Goodness.
You know what is mad? When
X-rated content.
But when you see, yeah, no, this could be cut out, couldn't it? I didn't think about that. But when you see that, okay, it's you everyone knows what it's like. Every guy knows what it's like to be hit down there, and it's not nice. But then when you think about on a professional football pitch and the speed that Tadic would have been running at to get a connection on that ball to score, and then the follow through, the amount, when you look at bad tackles or whatever, and you're God, the speed that they're running at, the speed that he was running at, and then that, I'm amazed he was able to carry on playing, to be honest. But yeah, so that's why I think they can win the Champions League on the basis of that. But no, I think Ten Hag is now quite clearly one of the best managers in Europe. He's got one of the most well-drilled teams in Europe. Okay, they're an Eredivisie side. They're not going to be coming up against the kind of challenges that the Premier League sides are on a week-to-week basis, or the Bundesliga sides, or even in La Liga. But there's a formula that that they can follow. Defensively, they're better, which is pretty amazing considering Daley Blind's still there, and he's another player who looks pretty evergreen. Sandro Martinez has adapted so well in the last 2 years. I think they've got as good a shout as any outsider.
Yeah, they've got to be in the mix, and they've got a young winger in Anthony who just continues to deliver on the biggest stage as well. He was phenomenal last night in that game against Dortmund. I actually saw a lot of people online saying they thought the Hummels red card was a bit harsh. I actually disagree.
I disagree.
I thought it was a red card challenge, to be honest. It could have been quite nasty. It just didn't cleanly connect with his leg. But
I don't think it warranted the abuse that Michael Oliver got after. It was almost the kind of dismissal by Hummels, as if to say, this guy is nowhere near a European ref standard. I thought there's a point where he was off his feet. Maybe it was a bit rash to show red, but I've seen way worse decisions than that. I feel really sorry for him. But I mean, if you said that Ajax were going to beat Dortmund 7-1 on aggregate over 2 legs in this Champions League group stage, you'd have been laughed out of the room. But what unbelievable side! It's so exciting, actually.
Yeah, for sure. Particularly that first performance in Amsterdam, that 4-0. I thought that was one of the best performances I've seen this season in Champions League, in any league. I just thought they were phenomenal that night. Henry, let's move on to Real Madrid, which seems like a weird shout to say for a dark horse. But given where they've been in the last couple of years, given their sort of cut back in spending, at Naveen Kumar's 11th suggestion doesn't actually seem that crazy, because people would be surprised if Real Madrid won.
Yeah, I actually rate this suggestion from Naveen. And if you look at it, the last few seasons, Real Madrid haven't been amazing. Obviously last 16, but then they did get us to the semi-finals last year, and I think that's actually forgotten about sometimes. I think it was kind of, they were in the underwhelming sort of side of the draw going through. They did beat Atalanta, got past the Liverpool side, who really weren't in the same kind of level of strength as they are back now. We've seen them back at their pomp, playing unbelievably again, and then Chelsea rolled them over pretty easily in that semi-final. Obviously went on all the way to win, but now I can see why people think they're dark horses. As you say, the 3 English sides and Bayern Munich are head and shoulders really above the others in terms of the superpowers in the tournament this year. Real Madrid aren't quite there, and that's kind of been echoed within their Champions League performances this season so far. I mean, that 1-0 victory against Inter Milan was very lucky. Let's have it right. They were very fortunate to scrape away from that. freak 2-1 loss at home to Sheriff, who, I mean, looks like they're probably going to qualify for the Europa League.
Galazzo, isn't that?
Yeah, oh my goodness. Yeah, that guy,
Runner,
I think the guy who scored, he scored a direct free kick the week afterwards. I mean, unbelievable from him. But yeah, and then they've sort of been bouncing around through. They really turned it on away to Shakhtar Donetsk. I thought that was one of the performances of the competition so far, that 5-0 there. But then at home last night, 2-1. Benzema sort of bailing them out of trouble once again. Like, Shakhtar had a lot of chances. Shakhtar really could have scored, and that's kind of been the theme, I feel like, to Real Madrid this season. We've never quite known necessarily what to expect from them, certainly in this sort of Ancelotti era. One thing we can say is they're super attacking. They take a hell of a lot of shots. At the moment, I think they're ranked first in the Champions League with 22 shots a game at the moment, and actually 9.7 for shots against, which isn't too bad. That's about the 10th. But they do tend to concede some big chances at the moment. They are giving away goals. We look at their recent form in the league as well. They're 1 point behind Sociedad at the moment. Sociedad, who missed a trick the other weekend, to sort of extend that lead at the top. Real Madrid, I think they've sort of drawn a number of games in their last 5 outings. I haven't been able to quite get it over the line. 0-0 draws against Espanyol. If you're in what is proving to be a really close La Liga race, these are the kind of points they need to be picking up, sort of converting into 3. So yeah, listen, I think they're in a far better state than certainly sort of the Barcelonas, and I think they're better than Atletico Madrid at the moment. I think Real Madrid are probably favourites for the title, but they still warrant a certain element of an underdog status, don't they? And look, Benzema's been amazing in the competition. I think whilst you've got him up front, you've always got a good chance. We were talking about Seb Haller at the moment. He seems to get it. Benzema's always understood how to play in the Champions League. Massive big game player. 4 goals already in 4 games. Vinny Jr., Rodrigo playing so well too. Vinny Jr.'s on 3 assists as well. 2 more last night. That second goal, by the way, unreal.
Nice goal,
some of the one-touch football involved in that. It's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah, I mean, and you know what? They haven't got like the most depth in their squad at the moment, do they? There's been a lot of players who've hardly featured at the moment. Mondi, Hazard, Asensio, all played under 180 minutes. I was reading this week on Transfer Talk, maybe Asensio could be sold in the winter. His contract's up in 2023.
I saw Liverpool and Dortmund linked. I swear Liverpool are always linked with Asensio.
Yeah,
but
I'd love to see Dortmund would be great. Asensio to Dortmund would be so fun. He's only 25 as well, and he just had a bit of a knee injury. Let's see if he can turn it around. But yeah, I think once Bale is actually back, because I think Bale started the season positively, that's another good option off the bench, particularly with Rodrigo. I think he's picked up a bit of a knock recently. He's not always 100% fit. So yeah, once they get a bit more depth maybe up front, let's see what they can do. And no one will want to draw them in the next round. That's for sure. I think Inter will probably follow them through into the knockout stages. But yeah, I can see Real Madrid putting on a bit of a run. And actually, Carlo Ancelotti, he does know what he's doing in the Champions League.
I think tournament manager, isn't he?
People always forget this about Ancelotti, is how many times he's won this competition. People seem to think his career started with like Real Madrid sometimes, but they forget everything he achieved with AC Milan, sort of the way he worked himself up through with Parma and Juventus as well. So he's an unbelievable manager. And the last time he was on the competition, bear in mind, it was a few years ago, he did really well with Napoli in what was a tough group against Liverpool, kind of in their peak. I remember he beat them, didn't he, at the Stadio Olimpico, and they went
beat them in Anfield,
really went close to him. One of those kind of classic Anfield nights. Yeah, honestly, it's so I hate it.
Henry Hill's not a believer in Anfield.
No, I there is something to it, but I hate it when any big game they're like, oh, it's a big night at Anfield. Here we go again. But yeah, let's see. Are they the favourites? Probably. Probably not, but I think Real Madrid could go far, and I could certainly see them beating a PSG right now. I think PSG are a bit of mud, but anyway, Real Madrid, good suggestion, underdog.
Yeah, well done, Naveen. I think it is a good one. I think I was pleasantly surprised, even though Liverpool had a lot of injuries last time they met in that quarter-final, like how dominant Real Madrid were in that tie. It wasn't like they luckily got through that. I thought they were the outstanding team in that. And Vinicius Jr. gave Trent Alexander-Arnold a really hard time, and it seems like he took a lot of confidence from that into this season. Ancelotti seems to have sort of improved his efficiency in the box. He's taking shots with fewer touches. He's taking shots from better areas, and obviously if you take more shots from better areas, your goals go crazy, and fair play to him. Right, let's move on to another suggestion. RB Salzburg at the suggestion of Travel Vision. Now, RB Salzburg, annoyingly, probably I think they could have already been through if they'd beaten Wolfsburg on Tuesday night, but they had a bit of not a stinker per se, but Adeyemi missed a big chance. He's missed actually a couple of good opportunities. I think he missed a couple of spot kicks in the first game, if I remember correctly. So he could be way higher up the goal scoring charts. He has performed really, really well on occasion, but like any young striker, in his first year, probably leading the line for RB Salzburg at least. This is like his coming of age year, and he's shown a little bit of weakness in front of goal. Wolfsburg was a bit of an error, and then I thought they conceded one of the goals of the week, really, to Mecha from a ball from Maximilian Arnold as well. And it was great to see Kofeld, the Wolfsburg manager, who's come in for a bit of stick in terms of getting that job at Wolfsburg because he was relegated with Werder Bremen. And I've seen a lot of people on Twitter be like, that never happens with English coaches, that you get relegated and then you move to a Champions League club in the same year. Yeah. That would just never happen. That's Eddie Howe going to Liverpool or Chelsea or Man City or United. It's just not going to happen. But RB Salzburg, because they're so dominant in their own league, they're already, this was their first defeat on Tuesday in 22 games. They've already won 17 of those. I feel like they can take a lot of confidence. They really know how to see games out in their own domestic league. And obviously it's a different standard in the Champions League. But I just don't think you can ever really doubt a team that have such threat on the counter-attack, such a young team. They're going to keep on going for the whole 90 minutes. Think of their 5 or 6 scorers in the Champions League this year. 5 are under the age of 21. 3 are under the age of 21. So that is a really impressive machine that keeps on going with RB Salzburg. I'd be surprised if they made it past the last 16. And it has been a bit of a disappointing group, to be honest. I expected more of Sevilla, Lopetegui Sevilla, still just ultra defensive on the biggest stage, not particularly entertaining side to watch. So Salzburg, maybe one to watch in the latter stages of the tournament, but unlike Ajax and Real Madrid, I can't see them getting past the last 16, to be totally honest. The other suggestion we had was from Euro expert, which was Lille. And they've had a really difficult year so far. I think they've only won 5 of their games in all competitions. Obviously still dealing with the departure of Galtier, Mike Maignan, etc. last summer. Jocelyn Gourvenec's come in. We're not a massive fan of him here on Euro Football Daily. And they've largely struggled, but they did beat Sevilla on Tuesday night, slightly fortuitously. I think it was Bambro and Akone who got the goals there. And you're just never quite sure with Lille this year whether they can go deep. I was surprised that Euro expert, who knows a lot about French football and who's a regular contributor on Continental Club, wanted to suggest them, to be honest. And their stats are pretty damning as well. 19th for shots per game, 9th for shots against per game. So they do still have that solid defensive record that served them so well in Ligue 1 last year on their way to their title. But I'd be very surprised if they made a big dent here. I think the other guys we need to quickly mention, Naz, before we move on to the big match preview, is the 2 Italian teams that still hold a bit of hope. Juventus, who've surprised a lot of people in this competition, and Inter. I mean, McCubs, Juventus, struggling in Serie A, but have generally been pretty good in the Champions League.
Yeah, I've been. I mean, I've not seen. I think it's only the Chelsea game that I saw the full game of in terms of Juventus's Champions League run, but they were superb in that. Defensively, were just one of the best defensive performances I've seen this season, and. Yeah, they've otherwise been really, it's just been very comfortable for them in this group. And I think, I don't know, I'm just thinking, Max Allegri, like Ancelotti, he does know how to go deep in this competition. And okay, the standard wasn't as high. It was only really Real and Barca and Bayern who were really real formidable teams in the mid 2010s when they last kind of made a real go of it. But having said that, they still do have a really good squad, and I think over the course of a season in Serie A, it doesn't look like they're going to be able to make up that ground, does it? I think they just had too bad a head, not the opposite of what a head start is, too bad a disadvantage from those first few weeks. And I think, Serie A is a tough league over the course of a season now. We as we've seen in these opening weeks, there's just so much competition. Whereas over 2 legs against another top club, I think Juventus can always give themselves a chance because they've got, first of all, they've got that experience, which I think is, sometimes overstated, but they do still have a core of very experienced players in the back line in particular who have been there before. They've still got so much quality going forward. Like we've seen, Chiesa is a great guy to have in tournaments. Yeah. Italy know that, Juve know that as well. He was their talisman last year, wasn't he, in that unfortunate last 16 tie. They do have the tools to be able to get one over. Like you could have Juve coming up against like Liverpool in the last 16, and I think Jurgen Klopp would be a bit worried about it. Like they're a team that they certainly are underdogs in their current predicament, but they are similarly to Real Madrid in some ways, I don't know, there's still something about them where over 2 legs on the big occasion, that they've got a big chance.
Absolutely. Hopefully Bonucci picks up his form. He's had a shocking last couple of weeks. Henry, quick word on Inter Milan. Simone Inzaghi last 16 last year with Lazio. Do you think they could cause a couple of shocks in this year's competition?
Yeah, of course. It's good to see Sanchez back scoring goals. I'd actually genuinely forgotten that he played for Inter Milan.
I think it's their top earner still, isn't he?
Yeah, no doubt. But I think so. They're a bit softer under Inzaghi than they were before, but that's to be expected. Already rumours that a lot of the Tottenham players are struggling to cope with the sort of demands of Conte in North London, which is great. So yeah, I can't see them going too far. Maybe I think a quarter-final would be a great achievement for Inter Milan. Dzeko scoring goals as well. Still got incredible players. Let's see if they can keep. All these rumours linking sort of Brozovic, etc., De Vrij to Tottenham. So let's see, because a lot of the players' contracts are expiring at the end of the season, so they need to be a bit sensible how they go about things. I just want to give one shout out to Benfica. I think Benfica, I'm surprised no one mentioned Benfica in the comments. I think going up against Bayern was so unfortunate in terms of it. They obviously lost 4-0 the first game, but they played so well. They played really, really well. They really took the game to Bayern there, and obviously lost 5-2 again.
Scored some great goals.
First goals that I think Bayern have conceded in the competition, which is nuts. So yeah, I think Jorge Jesus, he's the old salty sea
Wily
dog.
Fox.
Yeah, Wily Fox of European football. I think he's got them playing really well, and all the Portuguese sides I think have held themselves up to pretty well.
As well,
Porto, even Sporting, have a good chance of going through if they can beat Dortmund. So yeah, but Benfica in particular, I think this is as good as I've seen them play in a long time, and I'd hope they get through. I hope they beat Barcelona, and I hope they go on a bit of a run the way we saw Porto do when they beat Juventus last season.
Okay, there we have it. Yeah, I kind of agree. I think if Inter Milan get to the knockout stages, they'll be pretty tough for that. I don't think they've been there since 2012. Benfica, one to watch. Guys, who are your dark horses for this year's Champions League? We've named loads of them there, but I want to know yours in the comments down below. And let's move on to our big match preview. Right, guys, this weekend, there's a lot of good games coming up. Have a load of this. Valencia take on Atletico Madrid. There's Rennes versus Lyon in Liga. Juventus versus Fiorentina in Serie A, obviously. And there is the Milan derby. Now, I know what you're thinking. You've got to preview the Milan derby, surely. But last week, when we were still just, young men who didn't think this was possible, filming in person, when we were filming on Zoom, we covered Milan versus Roma. So I don't feel like we can do it again. Milan, that is.
Shocker.
So instead, I know we should have had some foresight. Apologies. But Milan, Inter, it's going to be a great game. Anyway, instead we're going to talk about the big game in the Bundesliga, which is RB Leipzig versus Dortmund, which take place on Saturday at 5:30. It sees 2nd versus 8th in the Bundesliga as it stands. Both probably not incredibly happy with how their season's gone so far. I'll leave that to the floor. Henry, let's kick off with the hosts RB Leipzig, though, who put in a pretty good performance against PSG in midweek, but the league form has been inconsistent.
I'm pleased they walked away with a draw. They celebrated. I remember the commentator was going, "What are they doing?
They need to win.
They need to win." I think they are, at this point they're not going through necessarily. I think it was just more of a
they needed something
celebration of their efforts, which they did deserve. Obviously, they missed the penalty in the first half, and then Szoboszlai stepped up to score the second. Tried to get psyched out by Neymar. Apparently, he was telling him where you're going to put it and stuff like that. It was quite funny. But I'm pleased. I'm pleased for Leipzig, and I'm pleased for Jesse Marsch as well. It's interesting. I was just talking to Joe, and he was saying how poor Leipzig are. And don't get me wrong, they did have a difficult start. They won just one of their 4 opening games. You're thinking, oh dear, it's not really the way you want your new managerial reign to kick off. But I think I'm going to say this again. Nagelsmann is an incredible coach. We've seen what he's doing with Bayern Munich. Following in his footsteps is not going to be easy. And they don't play the same football.
Particularly in attack, I think, because he gets so much out of his attackers.
Exactly. And they play in a completely different style. And Marsch is more that kind of vertical, down the middle kind of approach. I mean, I'm pleased for him, and I'm pleased that I feel like they are going to get given time. He's going to get given time to imprint his sort of vision onto this side. It's not imperative for Leipzig to sort of finish in the top 2, whatever, this season. I think just Champions League football is ultimately what they're aiming for, and then they'll look to rebuild the squad again. In my opinion, they've got quite a lot of attacking midfielders, and they need a bit more punch up front. But we'll get into that in a minute. Their form has really picked up recently, haven't they? They're unbeaten in the last 6 league games, winning 3 of those. They've risen up to 8th. They're just 2 points behind Leverkusen in 4th. So they are on touching distance of what I ultimately believe is their goal for this season, to get European football. And they do have some issues defensively. That's going to happen when you lose 2 of your sort of best centre-halves that you've had for a long time. I think Simakan has actually done a really decent job going into that side there. They've still got Willy Orban. He's got a lot of experience. And with Galacci in goal, he's a very experienced keeper once again. The foundations are there. I like Gvardiol as well. He's slotted in quite nicely too. They kept 3 clean sheets in 10 games so far across the season. That's a bit damning, but they've only conceded 4 in their last 6. So you can see the improvement as they kind of get to know each other a bit better. As we said, a defence which was pretty much thrown together at the start of the campaign. And you know, a lot of goals are flying in the Bundesliga this season. I think Freiburg have been ridiculous, only conceding 7 so far. Well, they're the only team out under a goal a game. So Leipzig are joint second best with 10, with Bayern and Mainz as well, so it's not easy for everyone, as we've seen. They do rank 4th for shots, 3rd for shots against, and they're the 4th best side by expected points in the division, which shows you they've had a bit of a tough time. The problem is, Andre Silva's not really been scoring goals, and I wrote about this recently. I think at Eintracht, basically, he had Kostic and Kameda coming down the wings, cutting back, and a lot of Andre Silva's finishes were in the box. His kind of dribble numbers were really, really low, and I think they've more than sort of quadrupled since he's come to Leipzig, because he's being asked to play more on the shoulder, sort of given the ball and given more responsibility. He's not really being found in those positions.
He's always providing for Nkunku more than he's being provided for, isn't he?
Exactly. Nkunku's been incredible by the way, this season. Really and we were talking about the other day, like players on the bench who maybe deserve more time. Yusuf Poulsen, why not put him back in? He understands the system a bit better, and sure enough, he's come in and he's scored goals in his recent games. 2 goals in his last 2 league outings. Andre Silva benched in their recent game against Frankfurt, and it's like they're stuck in that same rut of last season where they didn't really have a striker, and they're just relying on midfielders to kind of pop up with goals again, and that's where kind of Nkunku's coming strong. Obviously, we saw Sorloth, he's gone to Sociedad now because that didn't work out. So that's maybe something they'll readdress, but I think Andre Silva will come good eventually there. I've seen enough of him playing for the Portuguese national side this season to suggest that it's going to be okay. So yeah, and obviously like Forsberg as well, he's on 4 league goals at the moment. A really impressive Euros for Sweden after, I'd say, kind of a lull period in his career, having sort of been exciting, been expected to move on to places. I think when you stay at Leipzig for a certain length of time as that kind of player, you kind of realise, well, this is their level, if that makes sense. But it's good to see Forsberg kind of stepping up again this season. I really enjoy him there. But they do have a tough run of games. Their last 2 games were against Frankfurt and PSG. Now they've got Dortmund. I think Dortmund cannot afford to lose this if they're serious about challenging Bayern for the title. But then they've got Hoffenheim, Club Brugge, big game there, Leverkusen, Union Berlin, Man City, and then Gladbach, who've been...
That's horrible.
Gladbach, who won that 5-0 game, but have been difficult. But like I said, tough run of games. But I'm all on the Jesse Marsch train. I think it's really important. It's really important that it works out for him. And I think to judge the early season form, it's not like a Nuno where it's been kind of all wrong. As we've seen, expected points, they're meant to be better than they are at the moment. That's beginning to translate now. I'm excited for their future, and I'm excited for this game actually.
Yeah, I mean, with it being so tight between sort of 3rd and 8th or 9th at the moment in the Bundesliga, I don't think there's too much for them to worry about just now. And as you say, the form is going in the right direction. I'm kind of with you. I'm really glad they got that point against PSG last night, even though they're out of the competition. I think they've added quite a lot to it this year, to be totally honest. That 6-3 against Man City was a brilliant game. Obviously, 6 goals is never great against, but Nkunku was brilliant in that game, and he's going from strength to strength. I know what you mean about Forsberg. He did have a bit of a dip for a couple of years, but yeah, I think he's just settled in Leipzig now. This is kind of his lower Champions League club, Europa League level, I think. But yeah, long may it continue. It's good to see Szoboszlai back after such a long time out and actually playing really well, despite some misses against PSG in midweek. McCubs, let's move over to Dortmund. And initially, when we were sort of preparing for this show, I actually heard that Haaland was out until 2021, but I subsequently heard that he could be back in December.
Oh, really?
So
Okay.
it's only a month more to go. But still, that is a massive blow to not only their hopes in this game, but the wider scope of their season.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they've been so reliant on him, haven't they? Yeah, we actually put out a video a couple of weeks ago talking about a scout report talking about Dortmund's outside chances in the Bundesliga. I wrote it. I don't really believe it. I don't really believe it.
I remember seeing that section. I was like, come on.
I think it was always worth discussing, though, considering that despite their performances, they still are putting Bayern under pressure in terms of what they're still only 1 point behind them, right? Like, I mean, to do that despite not putting in great performances, I think is for sure. We do expect that gap to open up a bit. Nevertheless, you're still in with a shout as far as I'm concerned. You never know what could happen with Bayern, whether they pick up a load of injuries or whatever. Like, I think Dortmund, all things considered, are still in a pretty positive place considering the summer they had, which I don't think was particularly great. At least so far, we've seen kind of Donyell Malen hasn't had a great start to life there, has he? I don't think he's very much yet to take off. He's yet to score or assist in the league. So in terms of who they lost and who they brought in the summer, it's not been, they're definitely a weaker team than they were last year. And obviously, again, like you've got a new manager coming in, Marco Rosa, easily in the biggest job he's had in his career. So I think it's, again, you have to take that into account. And I think it can be made perhaps a bit easy to judge Dortmund on their early season form in that sense, especially defensively. We saw that kind of Rosa had his troubles with Mönchengladbach last season as well. So I think it will take time for this Dortmund project to get going. Nevertheless, it feels like to me in some ways like Haaland's definitely gone next year, right? So there is a chance there, right? Like if Haaland does come back in December and they can keep up the pace until then, that there is a chance there in terms of you've got the best young striker in the world. Like you're not going to have that chance again in that sense, in that you do have someone that you can rely on that much up top. But it's still a massive blow. And I wrote that section before we knew the extent of his injury, and it kind of came out, I think, on the day that it looked pretty bad. But if he's back in December, that's definitely a positive. I mean, he scored 13 goals and assisted 4 in 13 games. That's 9 in 6 league games. So I mean, he's just been on fire, hasn't he? And like I said, the kind of backup isn't particularly great in terms of Donyell Malen, who hasn't really performed to the extent that we know that he can. I think he's only averaging just over a chance a game. I think he's completing just over a dribble. He's taking less than a shot in the box, which is not great by his standards. And again, I think he'll take time to adapt to Rosa's system. I think he had quite a well-defined role at PSV, and when you've got, I feel like he just hasn't had that at Dortmund so far. Mokoko's also injured, so there's not really much to choose from. And like Leipzig, in some ways, the goals are going to have to come from midfield. Marco Reus has been pretty good, I think, this season. I think Julian Brandt, it's good to see him kind of back in the team fairly regularly as well, because I think he didn't get enough game time for my liking last year. I think generally he's been pretty superb for Dortmund since he came in from Leverkusen, when he has been given a chance. And then obviously you've got players like Torgan Hazard and Reina as well, who they've got a lot of good creative options in there. But without Haaland, they just don't have that superstar element. And I think that's that will probably be what comes back to bite them this season if he's out for longer than a month. But their recent form's been all right. They've won 3 of their last 4 league games. They beat Armenia 3-1, and then Köln, who had a really good start to the season, didn't they? They beat them 2-0. I think, I don't know. I feel the problem with this. I think Dortmund have overall been better than Leipzig this season, but I think on current form, I don't know. I was quite impressed by Leipzig against PSG, and I know PSG defensively were an absolute mess in those first 20 minutes, but equally Leipzig did force them into a lot of errors, and I feel like that kind of energy that they possess especially in the midfield, I think could cause Dortmund a lot of problems. So I feel like it's going to be Leipzig's for the taking this weekend.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. Big shout. Okay. Henry, are you in agreement?
Yeah, I think
you're backing Leipzig as well.
Dortmund just can't not concede at the moment. Is that right? Is that what I'm saying? Yeah. They just seem to leak goals, bad goals as well. I remember seeing Emre Can the other week when going up for a header, not even trying against Haller. It was awful. So yeah, I'm completely with the Cubs on this one. I think Leipzig are a better all-round team at the moment, and I think I wouldn't be surprised if they walked away with 2-0, 2-1 victory in this.
Oh, okay. Well, it would be a bit of a shock because Borussia Dortmund are unbeaten in their last 8 games against Leipzig,
wow.
Really?
Winning the last 4, scoring 12 and conceding 4 in that time. But Dortmund do have a lot of injuries, as McCubbs has mentioned. Morey, Reina, Dahoud, Guerrero, Haaland, Schultz, Chan, all out. That's pretty gutting. Leipzig, Sarachi, who I'm pretty sure is a made-up player at this stage, Halstenberg, Brian Brobby and Klosterman are all out for them as well. So some big injuries in the back line for Leipzig as well, but they do have that strength and depth since that sort of defensive rebuild they did this summer, and they should be fine in terms of fielding a quality 11. I'm actually going to go with Dortmund. I've just got a feeling. Even though they are away from home, even though the odds are stacked against them, there is something quite weird about this Dortmund side. Like, I think they're probably one of the strangest sides in Europe right now. You just never know what you're going to get. Some of the attacking play that they can instigate with, their players going forward in a sort of 4-2-2 or in a diamond in midfield, like they can cause Leipzig some issues. So I'm going to go for a 2-1 to Dortmund, but you guys are going, what was the scoreline?
I'll go 2-1 Leipzig.
Okay, Henry?
2-0 then.
2-0. There we have it, guys. Get your score predictions for that game, the Leipzig versus Dortmund clash in the Bundesliga at 5:30 on Saturday, in the comments down below. Let's roll straight into our quickfire questions then. Khalid _3134 says, what is the best destination for Ten Hag? Big question. Henry, where do you want to see the coming man of European football in the next year? Oof. Or maybe you want to see him stay.
I genuinely think he really likes managing Ajax, and I think there's no shame in that whatsoever. I think, depending on what Guardiola does at Manchester City in the next few years, I think that's a genuine place that he could hold out for, because he's got that kind of style, which I think they'd really appreciate. Whether or not the players would respect him enough is what I wonder about, because as we've seen at Tottenham, sort of egos can be tricky and difficult sometimes. So he maybe needs to go to another club first and prove something else outside of the Netherlands before that. So, I mean, but actually, it might seem silly to say Barcelona after what I've just said, but Barcelona are at such a point that I'd like to see him go there. Looks like Xavi is going to. He came out, I think, and said very publicly that he wants to go to Barcelona.
But didn't El Sad fly over the Barcelona officials and then not let them talk to him or something like that?
I actually think Al Sadd need to get in their place. I'm not being funny, but who do they think they are? I know they're trying to run their club very efficiently, but if Barcelona have come in for one of their greatest ever players, I don't think they've got... Okay, they've played 10 games. I'm not trying to disrespect the Qatari Stars League, but I am going to disrespect the Qatari Stars League. They've only played 10 games. Who are... Anyway, that's not the question that you've asked me. But I do think that Al Sadd just need to kind of
get back in their box,
politely step aside and stop trying to be this clever clog.
The Al Sadd fans in the comments are going to be livid.
Come at me, I'm ready for it. But Ten Hag, Barcelona, maybe a top German side as well, not Bayern, but maybe a top German side if it doesn't work out with Rosa. It's quite open at the moment. There's lots of options for there. But yeah, it's tricky. There's not tons of options.
Well,
really.
Speaking of tons of options, there's one potential option sitting next to me. Not
so
to manage Michael McCubbin FC, but Man United. Would you want Ten Hag to come in at Man United?
Absolutely. I think I was saying on the podcast last week, he's very much, he's comfortably would be my second choice after Mauricio Pochettino, I think, for Man United. I think he's, I know what you mean, Henry, in terms of he's not managed a senior side outside of the Eredivisie, but I just think his record at Ajax is good enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's got, go back to that, their run in the Champions League in 2018-19, and it was just one tournament, but I think he's able to beat. He's beaten big teams on big nights.
He's on for a player as well,
and he's also experienced. Obviously he learnt a lot from Pep Guardiola when he was at Bayern, and Bayern have kind of had him constantly as the kind of second choice whenever they've been looking for a new manager ever since, pretty much. He did a great job at Utrecht before. He was, basically their director of football as well as being their first team coach. So he knows how to run a football club. And I think, in terms of, in that sense, I think he would be a brilliant person to bring into United. I think he's one of those guys that, he seems like the new kid on the block, but he's also like around the same age as pretty much all the top managers in the world right now. I feel like he's probably older than Thomas Tuchel even. And I think he's a guy who can command authority even at a big club, even though he doesn't necessarily have, the top 5 league experience that a lot of these other coaches have. So I think he's got the pick of the bunch, really. Like I would be, if Pochettino wasn't available, say next summer, and United went in for him, I think it would be an absolute coup for United to get him, because I think next summer there could be a number of top clubs after managers, and Ten Hag may well have his pick of the bunch.
Can I, based on the idea of authority, if we look at PSG and we look at how Pochettino's struggling, because when you get so many good players, and there are lots of egos that he's having to juggle, particularly in that forward line, that's kind of where I think could Ten Hag, and we've seen PSG try and employ a manager of Ten Hag's stature, sort of status before, and it's not worked out. Unai Emery being sort of, I'm not saying that Unai Emery had a very respectable managerial record going into that. I'm not going to say that they play the same kind of football, but the point remains: would a club like PSG, with the players they've got, would they respect Ten Hag? Do you really think? You've seen how quickly they can turn. That's my reservation about this kind of situation.
I mean, I think Ten Hag is not too dissimilar a manager to say Thomas Tuchel. Okay, he's probably a more tactically rigid manager. But I mean, Thomas Tuchel, I thought had, aside from those last 6 months where he fell out with Leonardo, was brilliant at PSG.
Yeah.
He did command that respect. I think, I don't know, there are so many different facets to management, right? And I wrote a script about Graham Potter this week, and it really brought home to me just how kind of 360 like the job of a football coach is, in terms of tactically you've got to be astute, but actually even more so than that, and I think it's Julian Nagelsmann who said this, that 70% of it is actually human relations and man management and emotional intelligence and all these kind of things. And I think at least from everything I see with Ten Hag, I feel like he does have all those attributes. And I think if you enter a club and you can, I think it's about convincing players that what you're doing makes sense. And I think I just feel like I would back Ten Hag to do that. I think he's his right to have a lot of confidence in his abilities, because he's been able to create 2 brilliant Ajax sides that measure up to some of the best in Europe. So I think that alone, but I mean equally Ronaldo, Pogba, they're difficult players to mould. But I think you have to kind of see beyond that and be well, those players aren't necessarily going to be around forever, and there's otherwise a very young and mouldable squad there. So I'd absolutely take him there. But
they've also started well under other managers in the past. Man United, the first year under Jose wasn't too bad at all. First 18 months under Jose wasn't too bad at all. And I think Ten Hag, I think he's highly unlikely to swap Ajax for Man United mid-season, but I could definitely see him going there next summer. But I think the job he really wants is Bayern. And maybe that's in 2 years' time if Nagelsmann then goes to City, or if Nagelsmann, for some reason it doesn't work out at Bayern. Frankly, I don't really see that happening. But I think Ten Hag, having coached there, having been in charge of their B team, having learned so much under Guardiola, which was all explained in an Athletic article I read this week by Rafa Honigstein, which was really, really good. Highly advise everyone go read it. He is obsessed with, not obsessed with Bayern. He really wants to work there in the future. And he's almost seen as a German-style Dutch coach, if that makes sense. And people in Holland used to actually take the piss out of him for being too German. But anyway, there we have it. But in terms of managing PSG as well, I think they've tried so many different things, PSG. I don't really know where the route is for them, totally, to be honest. But guys, where should Ten Hag go next? What level do you think he's at? Are we getting too excited, or is he the coming of Christ? The second coming of Christ. I think it might be the latter. Anyway, guys, excuse my blasphemy. But yeah, thank you very much for watching Continental Club this week. Back in person for the first time since, must be March 2020, in a new location. Thank you so much to the East Dulwich Tavern. We will be back next week, hopefully, and for many weeks after that, unless there's some sort of scheduling issue. But yeah, this is going to be our new location. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Henry, if they've enjoyed watching this show, what should they go and watch now?
Oh, you know what? I co-wrote a scout report with Pat about 3 managers that we think are ready for the Premier League.
Ooh.
Yeah, I had to show Pat a few of the ropes, show how it's done a little bit. But yeah, honestly, really interesting stuff. I love Christophe Galtier. I think he's the most underrated manager in Europe. He's managed 3 clubs in 11 years. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And only 4 months off in that time. We look at like how he galvanises teams. The Sociedad coach, fascinating what he's done. Alguacil, what he's done with that side on basically no money over 5 years, just improving them, bringing players through, unreal. And then the new Fiorentina coach, the beautifully named Vincenzo Italiano. Genuinely, I think these guys are going to be really interesting for the next decade or so. So go check out that.
Nice, that sounds like a great video. McCubs, anything from you?
I was going to ask, did you suggest Galtier for Newcastle by any chance?
We suggested none of the above. Newcastle can rot in a hole.
I was just thinking Galtier would actually be great for them. Probably keep them up just about. What have I written? So yeah, there's an explained about Graham Potter coming out this weekend.
Yes.
How he became, the best English manager in the game, pretty much. And yeah, that's about it, I think.
Nice.
That's all I can think of right now.
Nice, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much again to the East Dulwich Tavern. Thanks to Zach behind the camera, our cameraman supreme, for setting this all up. And guys, we will catch you next Friday. Goodbye.